Runs out of options, pushes it forward to side bottom. A little grin from Bucks. It's a famous win. A black and white fairy tale.
G'day and welcome back to the All Things Footy YouTube channel, where today we are continuing our season review series, having a look a bit in depth at a bit of a shambles of a season in the Collingwood Magpies, Liam.
Yeah, that's to say the least. Everyone didn't think this everyone kind of did after the off-season they had last year. They deloaded about three or four of their best players, and everyone thought they'd be sliding down the ladder, but I don't think anyone would be predicting that they'd be finishing second last and only registering the 6 wins. For the year, they did challenge a few teams throughout the year, though. They only lost to Geelong by the 10 points and Port by 1. So not all teams gloom, although they did trade their number 2 pick last year to the Giants, so they no longer have that, but they should be getting Nick Dacos. So not all doom and gloom for the Magpies. They will be improving their midfield, you'd think, with Dacos, but yeah, just to say the least for the good old Collie Wobbles.
It was.
Yeah.
Now, not many, only the 6 wins, but what would you say was the best out of the 6?
I've got to say it was against the Demons in round 13. It was Buckley's last game as coach. As he said, he would he stood down after, all things was going wrong in Collingwood. So they got up over the top of the place Demons by 3 goals, I think it was in the end. So big performance. They sent off Buck in style. And yeah, just a great game for their footy club. What do you have as their best win?
Yeah, so mine. Just 17-point win. As you said, over the top of the table D's. So yeah, it was a pretty class performance, and Pendlebury stood out a lot from memory.
Yeah.
Your worst loss of the 16, what was the one that stood out?
There was a lot to choose from, but I ended up going with their round 22 loss to Brisbane by 85 points. They just didn't show up. They kicked the first within the first 30 seconds, I believe, and then Brisbane just took the game out of their hands, and Collingwood just kind of shut themselves, and Brisbane just ran over them by 14 goals. But it was pretty much just sum up their season in the end, just a 85-point shellacking. So yeah, that was their worst loss for me. Which one did you go with?
I had a different one. We're going to go back to round 7. They hosted the Gold Coast Suns. I believe it was round 7. And kicked only 7-13, 55, and lost by 24 points in front of their second worst crowd in the past 21 years. So not the best performance.
Yeah, for sure.
For a Pies supporter. It sums up their season, that game, pretty much. They were they were in control in the first, and then dropped off midway through the second, and never came back. It's a pretty boring game to watch on top of that as well.
Yeah. The next thing is probably highlights for their best and fairest. Who did you have coming in their top 3?
So in third position, I went with a bit of an odd one. Braden Maynard had a ripping season down back, sort of, I guess, carried their defense.
Yeah.
Second will be Grundy, who normally would be first on a Collingwood best and fairest. He's one of, if not the best ruck in the comp. Probably second for me, but he's just an elite talent. But
he is.
It's
Yeah.
annoying that Collingwood are almost wasting his prime at the moment because he's sort of in
Yeah.
that peak age.
Yeah. He is.
And coming in at number one will be a bit of a surprise. I don't think we would have seen this at the start of the year. If
I
you had to
certainly
tell
didn't.
me Collingwood's
Yeah.
best and fairest top three, I don't think he would have even been in there.
No.
Jack Crisp coming in at number one, who I think he averaged about 27 a game or something like that. He stood out every game. He sort of put them on his back.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
much else to say. How did
Yeah.
you go? Anything different?
I went as the same top two, but for number three, I'm going to go Jordan De Goey. I think they swung him into the midfield, that Melbourne clash, or one of those clashes, and he popped 30 touches and a couple goals. So, and then from then on, he played throughout that midfield role, and he averaged, I'd say, about 20 to 25 touches a game. He was just elite in there for Collingwood, so he sneaks in as my number three. And then I also had Grundy and Crisp with, just for a career best season for Jack Crisp this year. It might be his breakout year.
Yep.
So yeah, great signs for Collingwood fans to see him doing well in what was not so great of a season.
Now on to your most surprising player. So either the person that exceeds or doesn't quite reach the expectations for the Collingwood 2021 season.
This is probably the most surprising of all surprising players. At the start of the year, I couldn't even told you this bloke was on their list. But Darcy Cameron,
Big call.
I actually never heard of him, but yeah, Darcy Cameron, came in as their second ruckman, I believe. He's 27, we found out the other day somehow. I could have told you he was about 22, 23, but he played that good role. He played the big tall forward, and he's good at contested marks. He kicks good amount of goals and backed up Grundy when Grundy had a spell on the bench. So just probably a breakout season for him too. So yeah, it's good to see him do well for Collingwood. Who do you have as that one?
Yeah, I had Darcy Cameron as well. Big 200 centimeter forward ruck. So it's a pretty good second option from what I've seen throughout this year. And I sort of watched their round 23 game very closely. And he was in and about throughout the whole contest. So now what or who or how do they need to go about next season as well as this off season? So who do they need to target or something along that kind?
I think the number one priority on their list is just to get Dacos and get him nice and secured. I think they'd be delusional not to match the bid. So I think they're going to get him, but also just try and find some good play, because they also lost their second overall pick, which is a big blow to Collingwood for a team that's heavily rebuilding. I think I saw their first pick in this draft is pick 33 or something like that. So hopefully they need to find somebody.
They likely would have used that second pick to match the bid for Dacos as well. So
yeah. So just need to hit the draft as they will for the next few years. Try and find a steal somewhere, and just get Dacos. I think he's probably he'll be AFL ready, so he'll be able to go straight in. So I think that's all they need to do is just hit the draft. That's all they have to do. Do you agree, or do you think they should?
No, yeah, I tend to agree. Sort of almost got a rebuild coming through. Just one thing on the Pendlebury note. There's been a bit of talk recently. He has stated that he is willing to commit after a bit of a misread on a tweet. Do you think he's staying at Collingwood?
I think it's the bloke Pendlebury is. He'll see out his career at Collingwood. I think he'll stick to his word and say he'll say a one club player, and then he'll probably go off somewhere else and find a coaching role. I don't think he'll leave Collingwood. He's only got 1 to 2 more years, in my opinion, anyway. So I think he'll just see out his time at Collingwood. And end up as a one club player. So do you think he'll leave, or do you think he'll stick around?
Not as a player. He won't leave. I
Yeah.
tend to agree. He'll probably find somewhere else in a couple of years' time for that post-career role, like many
Yeah.
players do, but not on the playing side of things. Now, your predictions for 2022. Where are they gonna finish at this stage?
I've got them in a 16th. They're not going to be rising above the bottom four for the next few years. So I got them snug in at 16th. One position up from this year. So what do you think they're going to finish?
I agree with this 16th. I think they're not the worst team in the comp. There's still a few below them, but I don't think that they're necessarily great, to say the least.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
the report grade. If this was a test and you had to give them a report on the front of the test, what are you giving them?
It's not pretty, but I've stuck them in as a D plus.
That's generous.
It is generous. I just thought they had a few positives. They had a few good players, such as Quainer and DeGoey, entering his prime. They've got Crisp, they've got Grundy, Cameron. So they've got a few good guys that they will hopefully be able to evolve around. But still not the prettiest of seasons after making finals last year. So yeah, what'd you grade them?
I went one lower and I went with a D. I just think after the off season that they had 10 to 12 months ago, and after finishing was it seventh or eighth last year, and then dropping all the way down, it's not a pretty sight. I think it's their lowest finish ever because they've never won a spoon and they haven't finished below 15th, I don't think, ever. So there you go.
Yeah.
Not a pretty sight.
Yeah, it's not for sure. Yeah, after finishing 8th last year, to slide down to 17th is not a pretty sight at all. So yeah.
I think that wraps it up, unless you have any other, not really news, but any other comments to add about a pretty dismal season.
No, nothing to add. Just dismal season for Collingwood. It did not look pretty at all.
All right. Thank you all for watching and listening. That concludes our Collingwood review, and we will catch you probably tomorrow for the Gold Coast Suns review, which will be another pretty negative review, in my opinion. Catch you then.